You're watching Thoughts on Tech powered by Eastern Communications. Now in this podcast series, we are discussing cybersecurity. Especially now, with the booming digital economy, a lot of businesses are actually forced to put their business online. Question is, how do they protect their businesses from any form of cyber threats?
AI is a tool. So whether it's a friend or a foe depends on who uses it. So I suggest for everyone who's afraid of AI, use AI.
We are not saying that you will not be attacked. You will be. But the magic word there is that you should be resilient. If one of your services go down, you should be quick enough to get it back to service.
The truth is, no matter how small your business is, you need security. Whether physical security or cyber security. Security is still very important.
There will be threat actors always, but we need to adopt this because at the end of the day, we just want to use technology to better our lives.
I'm Jess De Los Santos and you're watching Thoughts on Tech powered by Eastern Communications. Good day, everyone. I'm Jess De Los Santos, and thank you for joining us here on Thoughts on Tech, powered by Eastern Communications, where we zero in on cybersecurity, especially with a growing digital landscape. It is but imperative that we beef up our cyber presence. Now, a lot of experts say the most heavily targeted sector is the financial sector. Now, with a lot of banks entering the digital space, how are they keeping up with the changes, with the challenges in the landscape? Now, to talk about that, we have with us today UBX's Managing Director for Engineering, Data, and AI, Pancho Reyna. Pancho, good day. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Much of your career really centers on data analytics and software engineering. But with what you're doing here in UBX, how are you handling data differently compared to your past experience?
When it comes to data analytics and data science, they're practically very old industries. Some people think that it's new, but we're still using mathematics from the 1940s, 1930s. We just have to deal with more data right now, actually more compute power, so you can handle, whereas before, way back in 2006, to process, for example, 100 million data points would take me days. Right now, it's actually, you're considered slow if it's done in an hour. So I guess when it comes to comparing how I deal with data before, it's always an evolving landscape of how much technology and data points that I'm dealing with at any given time or during that in that timeline or in my career spectrum. When it comes to fintech, for example, or in the financial services industry, your customers are basically entrusting their data to you.
Yes.
I mean, you already know if you already applied for a loan or a deposit or a savings account or even open the wallet. There's this step called KYC, right? Know your customer. No, they want to know us. The services provider is asking for your data willingly. You're giving me your consent so that I can avail of certain services that a fintech provider will give. And rather than use this data for profiling, you're basically establishing some form of trust handshake when you're doing your KYC. It's me making sure that you're not a malicious actor in my ecosystem. I'm using this data to make sure that if you avail of a loan from me, you won't go into default. So basically, you're using it for risk management. Sometimes it's just regulatory. I mean, AMLA would always be something that should be, we're a fintech company, but we are fully regulated by the BSP. So any form of compliance that a traditional bank normally has from a regulatory perspective, we still adhere to those. So those are the types of data that we use, and considering it's not a night and day contrast, but the difference in industry, one, you really want to collect and hoard data to use it for your profiling and your actual service, which is to push ads, to make marketing more effective. Here, you're using data to make sure that all of the other players, the customers in your ecosystem, are not harmed by another entrant, for example. Maybe you want to prevent a scammer. You want to prevent a malicious or let's just say a risky borrower from your lender partners as a fintech. So those are the types of use cases that I use data, and they're very, very different in reason.
When you're talking about cyber threats, what you're really trying to protect is data. Especially when you try to take a look at the figures, you have financial related attacks being at the top of the rankings here. You have, at least for the Philippines, 163,000 financial related phishing activities over the past year.
I guess that's the only ones that were reported.
Oh, there's more,
Yeah.
perhaps. Yeah. So, I mean, that presupposes as well that, this is going to be a huge concern for the financial sector. So how do you try to handle that?
When it comes to protecting data, I think first and foremost, it's important to respect privacy. So privacy, when consent is given, it comes with a list of bullets on how that data should be used, how that data will be contained, how that data will be transferred. Because
Is that line definite?
well, hopefully most legal or data protection officers make that line very, very definitive. Most of the time, you don't want all of the data. Because the more data that you gather, the more storage that you need. And the more storage that you need, basically that's a lot of real estate that you have to cover.
Some data are more important than others.
Oh, definitely,
Okay,
yes.
so which data needs most protecting?
A PII.
Okay,
So
expound.
basically personal information. Any set of data points that's going to actually pinpoint an actual person, your mobile number, your name, that's you.
Right.
Your name, maybe somebody can just use it. Your mobile number without a name is basically, somebody can just spam you. Put in an address, that's going to be dangerous. People can now zoom on you. People can basically use your identity on behalf of you, whether consciously or not. So these are the things that you want to avoid. But most of the time, you really want to ask that, especially if you're in the financial services industry. Some risk models are basically based on your employment records, pay slips. These are very, very sensitive information, but you give it willingly when you're applying for a loan, whether it's a house or a cash loan or a car. So, but you don't want to get any more than what you need for a particular service.
In this day and age, attacks, at least cyber threats, are getting more and more sophisticated. So it's especially in a post-pandemic era. So is that a more challenging space to work with now?
Oh, yeah, the technology is rapidly evolving. And from a cybersecurity perspective, the technology is also rapidly evolving that can be used for any malicious or for any form
offensive,
of attacks.
yeah.
I mean, the same technology that I'm using, or I mean, for example, you can code using generative AI. I can use it to make my life easier. I can use it to make my systems better. But the same hackers, the black hats that are looking to gain some form of advantage from your services are using the same tools, the same rapidly evolving mechanisms and frameworks. And basically, sometimes the more technology that you have to adapt and consume, the more vulnerabilities or possible cracks that they can exploit. I mean, most of the developers that I've worked with have this kind of obsessive personality. They want to build systems that are fortresses.
Right.
But that fortress will only last you for possibly 18 months tops.
Before something new comes along.
Something new comes along. It's now slow. It's now old. We actually have this campaign where we basically do our digital transformation in 100 days.
100 days?
Yes. So, I mean, not that it's going to be done in 100 days, but you want to have results in 100 days. You want to have results before any momentum that you built when it comes to transforming or adapting a new technology is lost. So you have to move very, very fast. But I guess it will always depend on the values and the drivers of the business.
Okay.
So for example, when I was working for high frequency trading for the capital markets industry, One of the markets that I was looking after was the Tokyo market. So it's in the top 5 when it comes to liquidity. And we're talking about the Japanese here who are very disciplined and regimented when it comes to implementing changes to their platforms. Not to a fault, but basically enough for developers like me who want to move fast to deal with some friction or some form of inertia. So whereas I just said in 100 days, so that's basically 3 months. We roll out something in 3 months. We transform something in 3 months. We do an e-commerce site for 3 months. My 3 months in the Japanese capital market is just basically just testing. I will have to roll out 2 lines of code. My guys will develop it in like 5 days. We will test it for 3 to 6 months. Before we ship it out. It's almost half a year.
Right.
2 lines of code. It's very, very risk averse because we're talking about a lot of money here. And we're talking about a different culture, a more regimented, disciplined culture than, for example, compared to Silicon Valley. And we're talking about a very, very different industry here. So it depends on the business drivers. But most of the time, especially if you don't want to get into the what we call the update cycle, for example, you're using this Python version or you're using this cloud version, in 3 months it will be end of life. In another 18 months, it's going to be replaced with the new version that you need to test. You don't want to get behind those.
So this is a constant thing.
This is a constant
refreshing
thing.
that you do.
It is a constant thing. So I guess that's really challenging. Whereas, for example, if we're talking about a system, a payment system, for example, that tech stack would have databases, cloud infrastructure, a lot of microservices, most of which are using some form of other open source technology that you're just adapting because you don't want to recreate everything at any given project that you're starting. So you reuse a lot of this. You depend on other frameworks that other developers are using or develop for you.
But that comes with a lot of cost.
It comes with a lot of cost when it comes to, for example, testing and, of course, a lot of R&D. But, well, it's open source and free. So you just adapt it. Now, for the cloud, for example, we're talking about various services depending on the infrastructure, whether it's Google or Amazon. And if you think of all this, all of those layers in the stack, from a cybersecurity standpoint, all of this can have some form of vulnerability. And all of this can be exploited. I mean, a black hat or a threat or a malicious actor will just obsess, for example, in a single framework that he or she will look for cracks or vulnerabilities. Or, for example, if I'm just looking at the database and I'm making that secure, I may have to do the same practice with all of the other services, the cloud. I'm dealing with 15 technologies. Can only obsess with one. So that's the thing. Now, you want to go in the update cycle. You want to be constantly changing and making sure that you're using the latest, if not the most stable. Because the same community developers or the same providers that are using this technology are doing that job for you of securing it rather than, I mean, we guys are developers. We want to solve business problems. We want to ship out apps. I don't want to get stuck in looking for all the vulnerabilities in a service or a database that I am using. But you need to be updated constantly.
Okay, it's one thing to do that constantly, the updating, the refreshing. It's another thing to actually have a robust pool of talents. Where are we at that stage?
Of course, my guys are handpicked. They're very good.
How do you make sure?
Well,
it's not the same for all organizations, I would think.
if we're talking about hiring, we have a stringent battery of tests. Yeah, some of which I think are among the industry's best. And this is modesty aside. I make sure that we really, I mean, it's the same as doing a KYC for a borrower. You want to cover your basis.
Are we training these people enough, and are we educating more and more people to actually enter the sector?
So one of the things that we always tell our guys is that, you know what, the best part of being the developer, especially when all of this technologies is coming, is you always get the feeling of being excited as a beginner. Because maybe you achieve some form of mastery in a particular stack, but the next update or the next technology that becomes a fad or becomes the norm, you get to be a beginner again, even if you're 25 years already in the industry. Once you embrace that, you will always try to be learning. I mean, for some people, once they achieve mastery, they try not to learn anymore because they can basically capitalize and
on the basics,
on being a niche developer, for example. But if you're looking at how technology is evolving and how fast it is evolving, that niche technology will be outdated in 5 years, for example. So you just have to embrace learning. And with that being said, we really want our devs to push learning, experimenting, actually, an experimental mindset. I think last year, so generative AI, it started 2022? It became a thing 2022. By last year, we were actually experimenting if you can code.
Ooh,
so I mean, AI. Right now, 2024, you can already code. But before that,
2022.
But yeah, so as early last year, we were basically experimenting on it. I mean, some of the generative AI capabilities will, like, be substandard, will be disappointing, but that's basically how you learn how to use it. So you just try and experiment.
Good thing you mentioned that, because I remember you saying that AI bridges innovation and financial inclusion.
Oh, I said that.
Right. Can you expound more on that?
Okay. So one of the things that UBX, so UBX as a fintech, we have a lending platform, we have payment systems, and we have next-gen banking applications. So just to be very clear, when I say AI, it's not generative. Okay. There's a subset of AI tools and basically mathematics and models that are more, let's say, deterministic. And that's where fintech is actually operating. I mean, generative, you use it to generate prose, to generate content, to generate literature. But fintech is finance and technology is always operating on the deterministic. It has to be exact. It has to be predictable and expected. Yet, we use data science for our lending platform because, like I said, most borrowers that are unbanked or most borrowers basically will not be approved for a loan in a traditional banking application. So what we did was to pull a set of lenders and use a different model for underwriting and basically processing the application. We used our own credit score. So we built a regression model from the data that we're capturing in our platform. Normally, you get yung mga credit score, for example, from CIBI, you get a credit history. That's your traditional score. We're doing alternative credit scores because we're already pretty sure that they will fail yung credit history nila. So we're trying to find alternatives such that these people who normally won't get a loan, but using our data science models and basically the data that they will provide us, we can create a risk model that at the very least can resemble the same risk models that the bank uses using
At least you're
their
providing
own
room
underwriting.
Still. You're
Yeah.
still trying to open doors here.
Yes.
For potential clients.
Open doors. Yes.
Right.
For people that let's just say will not pass the risk checks that
In a traditional sense.
In a traditional sense.
Okay, since we're already talking about customers here and clients, one of the primary things that we always have to consider when it comes to cybersecurity would always be customer education. So how is UBX handling that?
Okay. So at UBX, like I said, no, we have a lending, a payment gateway, and next gen banking. It's basically we put in what we call an open finance platform. All of these services where basically anybody can avail of certain financial services from a fintech perspective rather than going through your traditional banking services. For the lending, for example, it's a multi-sided platform. We have borrowers on one side, we have lenders on the other side. They basically, the borrowers have all these options wherein, okay, I'm gonna use, I want to apply for a loan from this lender, this. So we're talking about an actual ecosystem of borrowing and lending. Like I said, no, when you do KYC, you're basically establishing some form of trust, but you also expect the same trust. I mean, I trust that this customer or this lender will not be a bad actor in my platform. Because we're a platform operator. We're not the ones basically giving out the loan. We're not the ones we're just merely processing it. And you don't want bad actors in that platform.
Right.
And one of the things that you have to do is basically to educate them. Because at the end of the day, your service is only as good as the actors that you have in that kind of ecosystem. I mean, it's like a social media or a community. It's at some point, some communities or media will be toxic. You get out of it. It's no different from us. And of course, as you said in the very beginning of this conversation, fintech is the most targeted one. And if you look at it, it's not just at our platform who's going to be targeted. It's our borrowers. It's our lenders. So it's a shared responsibility when it comes to cybersecurity or even basically just protecting the privacy of the data of our actors. Right. And being the platform and being the guy that operates the technology behind it, it's up to us to basically drive that, and education and simple campaigns of like, don't click this, beware of scammers is actually will go a long way in educating. But
sometimes even regardless of how you try to educate your market, incidents still happen. So what should be the management process here? How do you minimize impact?
From a management perspective, I think the success metric for cybersecurity is any day that has no incidents or no attacks is a successful day. It's not like you want to celebrate your InfoSec team coming in to fix an already penetrated system. If that happens, your cybersecurity posture is already a failure. You don't want that. You, as much as possible, it's not even about preventing, it's about deterring. It's making sure that your systems, all your API endpoints are difficult, if not impossible, to penetrate. And making sure that day on day is up, always monitored, is a successful day for management when it comes to cybersecurity. Yeah, there are no heroes when it comes to saving a company from a cyber attack. Just a lot of sleepless night and a lot of lost money. Yeah.
Right. But just to wrap things up, you'd say at the end of the day, with the boom of the digital economy, with the boom of digital banking, it's still safe to make your transactions.
Oh, most definitely. My analogy when it comes to security is don't do anything. You're still going to be hit by lightning. I mean, at the end of the day, there will always be a threat. There will always be a risk. It's up to us, the service providers, to make sure that the risk, the threats, we can handle, so that all of the guys that will require of our service will be happy at the end of the day. So yeah, still use your wallet, still use your online payments. The goal is to go cashless at some point. Make sure that, as fintechs, we want to make banking less boring. We want to make banking less obtuse. It's too rigid. We want to embed it. We want banking, or basically all of these financial services, to be just the circulatory system that facilitates your Amazon purchases and all your Netflix subscriptions and all your other payments or other service requirements. So yes, adoption is key. So to the rest, yes, you will be scammed. Hopefully
not.
Hopefully not. There will be threat actors always, but we need to adopt this, because at the end of the day, we just want to use technology to better our lives.
In short, there's no other route to take. It's really just a matter of every part of society acting. After all, this is really going to take a whole of society approach.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much again for your time today. Pancho Reyna, Managing Director for Engineering, Data, and AI over at UBX. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. It was a wonderful experience for me.